just hello there. We will hang tight for a moment as folks begin to join the webinar. You both doing fantastic today?
Doing
Yeah,
well.
Awesome.
I really am. The weather is Meg, you're so sick of hearing me talk about the weather. I bugged her about it earlier. It's like we have 2 nice days in Calgary before it snows again, so I'm soaking in every ounce of it that I can get.
Very nice.
But I gotta come up with new topics of conversation when I see the same person twice in a day. Otherwise, it's
I'm with
ridiculous.
you, Nathan. Weather's just the easiest to go to.
The
No matter where
go-to.
someone lives, it's just,
And when you're
it
in Canada,
works.
it's life-changing. Not for the better either. It's always rough. All right.
Yeah,
I
cool.
don't know,
Okay,
midsummer, I'm gonna be jealous.
when you're sweating in Alabama.
Yep.
Okay. I think we're like a minute or two in. I think we can go ahead and start. Nathan, take us away.
Okay, very cool. I'll share my screen really quickly. Um, Here we go. And this will not be a super slide heavy. Can you see this okay?
We
Perfect.
can.
All right. This will not be very slide heavy. So my name is Nathan Thompson. I'm a senior AI solutions consultant here at Fullcast, Copy AI. And I will absolutely not speak for Meg, but we'll introduce the wonderful Meg Turner. If you want to say hi and introduce yourself.
Awesome. Thanks, Nathan. Yeah, great to see everyone. I am Meg Turner, Customer Success Manager for the team. Primary point of contact for those whose accounts I'm under, but always available as a resource to anyone. So excited to get started and teach you guys a little bit more about chat today.
Right. And yeah, we'll be talking about chat. If there are any questions at all, just feel free to leave them and we can answer them. Otherwise, like I said, this is going to be a very hands-on follow along. So we are going to talk about how to create a new chat. We're going to talk about how to access the library of prompts, depending on what you're working on, how to use the improve feature for better prompts, which LLM to use, because we are model agnostic, and I'll cover what that means a little bit later. We'll talk a bit about being enterprise safe and how we don't use any of your data to train any LLM's data. And then we will talk about brand voice and finally editing your outputs. We do have slides to go along with each of these, but these will be more for the follow-up. What we'll do is actually a live run through because it's fairly self-explanatory. If you've ever used something like ChatGPT or Claude, it's very similar. The advantage that we have is, again, we don't use your data to train anything, and also we're model agnostic, so it's like having 3 subscription for the price of 1. Then at the end, we're going to talk about the big question that we get all of the time. When do you use chat versus when do you use workflows? And while you might be familiar with chat, this is definitely worth following along. That way we get the foundations, and it really is an important step if you're just dipping the toes in the water for AI use. So I will change here. Can we see this now? Yeah, Copy AI. I said this
We
and I didn't say
can.
what it was. Okay, we can see Copy AI home screen. Great. We're going to start from the very basics. I'm going to hop in here to the Copy AI homepage and we click login. You can log in with your email address or you can do it with Google. And I'll sign up here. Oh, I used the wrong one. My first presentation ever. There we go. Okay. Now up here, depending on how many workspaces or team spaces you have, though most clients just have one, you find the right workspace that you want to work in. I'll do this from Fullcast. And then you can choose the team space and you have a personal section so that no one else on your team can see the chat. This is just between you and the admins at Copy AI, although nobody's looking. Or you could choose a team space so that other people can track and follow along. So today we'll do everything from the personal the team space just so that we can start fresh. When you're logged in, there are 2 different ways to access chat. Right here on the left-hand side, you can click this little plus icon and that will start a new chat experience. Or if you're here in the chat dashboard or even on the homepage, you go to chats and then create new chat up here at the top. Excuse me, you can even do that from the home tab. Create new up in the top right-hand corner. You have workflow table, and if you click chat, you can go there. Also, very quickly, with your chats, if you want to keep them organized, you can create a new folder and you can say like, oh, this is our chat for our product team. And maybe if we're in a shared team space, we want a chat folder specifically for our go back here. Come on, Nathan. There we go. We go back to maybe we want one for our sales team. And that way, if we do have a shared team space, if I weren't in the personal view, we can have these chats and move them to where they need to go, depending on which team is using them. And then we have a running history of all the chats that were there. So if you are a team lead and you want to see how people are using anything, or if you're worried about organizing your outputs, we have folders that can be team-based, not only for workflows, but also for chat. So we'll pop into a chat. The first thing that I like to do is it will name it by the date, and I like to change this depending on whatever I'm working on. So if I was working on, let's say, some content ideas for April 2026, I can name that up there. And before you do anything, we'll talk about being model agnostic, how to choose the right model and all of that. But the first thing I wanted to share was we do have this little tool that it gets underused or under-recognized by a lot of our users. And this is called Browse Prompts. And this is our prompt library. So if you need a few head starts with some go-to-market related things, you can look at our different prompts here that are pre-built, and you can look through the library. Like if we're doing content and SEO, we have blog post outline, full blog posts, an FAQ generator, and these will add the prompt directly into this prompt box. And then anything highlighted purple is all that you need to fill in. So if we were to use this FAQ generator, we'd say create a list of, let's say, 7 frequently asked questions about chat AI tools and provide answers as you go. And so if you go here to the browse prompts, you can see we have a lot of different pre-built prompts ready to go. So if you're worried about not being a prompt engineer, or you feel like you're not asking the right questions or getting the right outputs, it's worth taking a look here. We do have content SEO, email marketing, paid ads, PR and communications, recruiting, sales, different chat prompts, social media, and strategy. Again, all of these with their own subcategories. I won't list them all off for you, but these can be a really nice launching pad for anybody who's struggling to get started with the outputs that they want.
One silly question for you,
Oh,
Nathan.
yeah.
When it says custom there, is it like I could make one and save a custom starter prompt here for myself?
That isn't awesome. That's not silly at all. That was an oversight on my end. Yes, that's exactly right. So you can create a custom prompt here and say, let's say customer support doc. And then you can write a prompt, and it's like, given a transcript of office hours, I need a customer support doc and then you can list out the structure here. You can save that, and now you'll have this custom one ready to go. So if you find yourself always reprompting the same thing, that's a great question. Always reprompting the same thing over and over, you can create your own custom prompt there. And then later, if you'd like, you can edit that prompt at any time, save it, and it'll get saved for you.
Got it. Are there any guidelines on like word lengths? You might be headed this direction, but what's too long for a prompt?
I don't think there is such a thing as
Okay.
well, excuse me. For a handwritten manual prompt, I can almost guarantee you will never go too long. Usually where the prompt gets too long is when you start to attach different files. And if you're throwing, at a certain point, you can add too much, and it doesn't overwhelm it. It'll still do the task.
Mm-hmm.
But honestly, the context windows now, or the amount of information you can give it, is so large that for a chat feature, you're usually okay. Although I will say I've never once. Usually the big problem with chat prompts is people write too little and expect it to do too much, rather than the opposite problems. So one thing that I have played with in the past is if I am hoping to create a custom prompt, I will actually use a tool to record my voice of what I want, get a transcript, and use that as the start of the prompt. That way I'm giving it all the information possible. But if it's a repeated process, especially something like, say we're doing a blog post outline or something like that, you can see this is fairly light and you'd want to customize it to your team. And a good question that I tell people to ask is, if you were to give this task to an intern or a human, what are all the things that you would ask it if they were expected to do it again next week? And so what would you want them to have? Probably a template of some kind that you're following, and just the basic information that are baked in there.
Got it.
Okay. So we have this prompt library, which is awesome. The other thing with the prompt is if you write one, we have this improve button, and this actually will use AI to help you flesh out the prompt depending on what is in this field. So when I click improve, it takes a few seconds so I can filibuster while waiting. There we go. And it will actually create a more in-depth prompt that I can go through and start to edit. So in this case, you'll see that it actually came up with a larger, it actually started the FAQ itself. So on Chat AI tools, it'll have the introduction. You know what? I don't need an introduction and an FAQ, so I get rid of that. And then it will give it the list of FAQs that we need. What are the AI chat tools? And it goes through and it actually brainstormed the questions themselves. Now you can use this, improve, and edit afterwards, so you're not committed to anything that it came up with. But once you run that, you'll see that it will start to go. One thing that I will say about our Copy AI chat, and this can be something where people think, oh, it's not working. We do have the status working on it. But if you've ever used ChatGPT or Claude's chat or Google Gemini, it will stream the writing as it's working. And so you can kind of read and follow along as it's going. This does more of a batch run. And so you'd see it come out all at once. And it's just to let people know it is working. It actually takes the exact same amount of time because it's using the same LLMs. It just shows you at once rather than coming out all the way. And so you see here we have our FAQ. And we have our schema markup, which I hadn't even explicitly asked for. That was in the improve, which is something that's very important in helping people, in helping content become more visible with AI search engines. So a little side note there. Really quickly, because we did speak a bit about being model agnostic. What that means is that we do not just rope you into one LLM, and we do not have a proprietary LLM, which means Copy AI is not its own large language model. It draws from the best of the best, and we consider the best to be OpenAI's GPT, Claude, and Google. And we update these. We have an update coming soon to give us 4.6 and 4.7 Opus, and then the latest model 5.3 from OpenAI. We keep up with these. If you are keeping up with the news, you know that they come out lightning fast. And so we do make our product team updates these regularly, usually within a couple of weeks of the release. And so the cool thing is you can choose different ones for different tasks. And so if you are working on, let's say, research, I always recommend using Google Gemini. And if you are working on writing, I love using writing with 4.5 Opus. And this allows you to play and test with the different LLMs for your output. So one thing I tell people is if you are not getting the outputs that you want, sometimes just a switch of the LLM is the right move. And switch it here. You can also change it to be the default, or you can make it just in this chat. So I'd say, okay, I just want this the chat, or if I want to, I say, hey, I'm always getting better outputs with Claude 4.5 Opus. I can switch that here. Okay. The next thing that we'll talk about is how to configure something called brand voices. And you'll see here, we don't have any brand voices set. In our configuration tab, there are two components. We're going to talk about brand voice and Infobase, and these are pretty cool. So in our brand voice, we can start to create voices by clicking into brand voice and then create new brand voice. And you have a few options here. You can either add a blog post or you can add a URL, which is something that Chandra recently taught me, which is pretty cool. So you can go to forecast.com and it will take that homepage, scrape it, and analyze the brand voice. And this can also be a really good way of making sure, that it's coming out the way that you want it to. And if you're seeing things that aren't quite right, you can always go back through and say, okay, what is on the homepage that is prompting this brand voice to come out? The other option that you can do is go through and let's just say we were to go to AI/blog. And you say, okay, we need a blog post. And this is, an example that we really like. So it needs to sound something like this. You can take 50 to 100 words. I will pop this in. Analyze brand voice. This is 109. You can make it even more. Analyze brand voice. There we go. And so you can use URLs and it will scrape that page for the brand voice. And then you can also use a specific text that you like as the example. Once we're happy with that, we could say, this is Nathan's Copy AI voice. Save that brand voice. And then once we go into chat, we can now set this brand voice so it will come out similar to the style that we're writing for. Now, what's great is you're not limited to one brand voice. You have unlimited here. So if at any point you want to create another one, we can, let's say, just for the sake of argument, this was a different article, like this. And we'd say Ashley's brand voice.
When you work with customers, Nathan, do you see that different companies might want to have just a singular brand voice versus others might want to have like genre specific brand voice or people specific brand voice? Do you see like a full range of how people use this?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's usually the two that I see most often are channel specific. So they'll say we want to show up on our blog differently than we want to show up on LinkedIn or Twitter or TikTok or whatever. Usually social and long form content or even landing pages. Um, or you might not want your blog post to read exactly like your customer docs, and you want one to be more straightforward. You want one to be a little bit more, personal, personality based. The other place that I see this is if you are running like social media teams running thought leadership across social platforms for different thought leaders. And maybe what they'll do is they'll take a transcript, but they need it polished to sound like a certain person. So maybe we would take all of our C-suite folks and load their brand voices into here. And then anytime they come in, they can either prompt their own or whoever's doing their ghost prompting or ghost writing, I don't know what we call it now, can pop in and get something a little more personal. I always say that the better the inputs in the background, like if it is a transcript, the better. I think that's always the best. Um, but those are the two big ones I see, channel specific or personality specific for thought leaders. The next piece of configuration. Oh, and then again, really quickly, once we're here, we just refresh this to make sure it pops up. Brand voice, we have all these saved and we can switch these as needed, which is really cool. The other thing I wanted to share really quickly in our Infobase is in the configuration tab, there is Infobase, and this is almost like loading up, if you've ever built a little custom GPT or something like that, this is loading up the background information that sits in Copy.ai chat that you can put into any prompt whenever you want. And so if we were to go to Infobase, we click Create Infobase, and we could give this a name, let's say our writing rules and guidelines. Now we can either upload a doc, TXT, or PDF file, and it will automatically parse that PDF file and create the doc for you. Or if you have this as just a text that you want to copy and paste, you can do that as well. So maybe we'd say Copy AI has these writing style guidelines. And then you say, no M dashes, no sentence constructions, like it's not X, it's Y, if you've ever seen that coming out. Like it's not, yeah. All of those little things that make your outputs really unique to you or your brand or your company. Those are things that you can load in here. You can also write, customer data, ICP information, whatever you want. It is completely secure. We are SOC 2 Type 2 compliant, and none of this is used to train any LLMs. So anything that you load in here is like in its own little silo in terms of being in Copy AI, completely safe. You can also share it across your entire workspace. So now this doc, even though if I'm using it in my personal team space, I can share it across the workspace and then everyone else on the team will have access to this. And this is a great way for product teams to make sure that they are building the right brand voices across the whole team. So whether sales, customer success, or marketing is using these, they can use from the same central source of knowledge, which is cool. Once that's loaded in there and it's saved, all you have to do to pull that into a prompt is like, say, let's write me a LinkedIn post. You'll notice my brand voice is set to mine on chat AI equals follow these writing guidelines. All I need to do is hit a hashtag and you will see the Infobase entries that are here. I click writing rules and guidelines, and everything that I put into there will now be added automatically to the prompt. So if I find myself always adding the same things to a chat, all I can do is save it as an Infobase, and I can recall it at any point in either chat or workflows, which we'll talk about in a future office hours. So then we have the brand voice. Any other questions on brand voice before I get moving? Just wanted to show one more thing with chat. Yeah? Okay.
None for me, and I don't see any in the questions.
Okay, good. I'm being too clear. This is great. What I would do here is let's say that I were to write me a LinkedIn post on Chat AI tools. I don't expect great things from this prompt, by the way, simply because I have not really given it a lot of details. So if you don't like what you read, it's really just because I didn't give it any examples or details. But let's say it comes out with this. And I'm like, there's some things that I like about it, but not everything. Instead of saying rewrite that and this is something that Chandra on our team is really good at explaining how these algorithms are probabilistic, meaning if you give it the same prompt twice, it will always give you different outputs. It's never going to give you the same thing. So I've seen a lot of people in chat tools say, oh, rewrite it, and they'll give it different rules. And it goes from being 85% of the way there, and then it drops down to 65% of the way there because they were happier with things in the first version that didn't come out in the second version. Instead, what you can do here is just add it to the editor. And we have this inline editor here that you can use to change the headings to bold, italicize, capitalize. We can, let's say I would just remove this and change these to colons, not periods, because that can sometimes be an AI tale depending on who you talk to. Go there. And now we can keep that saved, and that will stay as the output. And then I can just copy and paste that over into whatever platform I'm trying to send it to. We have bulleted lists, ordered lists, strike through, basically anything that you'd expect from an inline text editor that we can use. And you can also add a link or just remove the formatting. And the last thing that I will share is obviously with any chat tool, the more that you can use, more input you can give it, the more examples you can give it, the better you're going to get in terms of the outputs. You can attach files at any point. So maybe you have some files that you don't need for Infobase because you're not reusing them over and over and over again, but maybe you have a product launch brief and you want to attach that as a file so that you can start to create the assets downstream that you would need. You can attach any files just like you can with any other chat tool. All right, now we're going to switch back to some high-level theory. That's the nuts and bolts of all of this. In terms of chat, it is pretty straightforward. Again, the differentiators here are that it is model agnostic. So you get the best of not both worlds, but three worlds. You get the best of OpenAI's LLMs, Anthropic's LLMs, and then Google's LLMs. And you have this prompt library as well, along with brand voices. So the same team can get different outputs from the same chat interface, depending on which brand voice is set. So that is very helpful.
And by default, Nathan, are all of the chats just automatically saved? Or do you have to change the name of it for you to save it?
Great question. Automatically saved, and you can see when it was run. But the nomenclature used is the date and then untitled. And so if you create a bunch without renaming it, you'll get a bunch of dates and then untitled. But what's cool is any product team lead can then pop in and say, oh, okay, what is the team working on today? If they want to be all creepy, stalkery about it, they can pop in here and just open it up and see what was getting run and where, and then who created it, along with who ran that first chat. All joking aside, not talking about people being creepy and checking your chat history. The bigger thing is if you're not getting the outputs that you want, someone else can come on the team and say, oh, I was having more success with this prompt. I see this is the way you're doing it. Maybe you want to change that. So it's a lot more collaborative than having your own little siloed chat tool. We've seen a lot of teams, their company said, here's a license to ChatGPT, and then everybody's getting the different branding messages. Nothing's connected to anything. And so we tried to solve for that by making a team space where everything was transparent here in the chat tab. All right. So this is the slideshow that we'll send along with this office hours. Just has everything that we just covered, library and improving prompts, and being enterprise safe with multiple LLMs, how to add your brand voice. But this is where I wanted to spend a little bit of time because we do get a lot of questions on when do I use chat versus when do I use workflows. And we're going to cover workflows in a separate office hours, but it is a problem when you use the wrong tool for the wrong job. So I really wanted to cover the two things that I tend to use chat for, and I recommend teams use chat for, is brainstorming and strategy. So if you're coming up with a doc that you're going to use for the team, let's say positioning, messaging, or a planning doc, if you're coming up with a content calendar that, let's say, the keywords are going to shift every month or every quarter, if you're not having to run and get consistent outputs, not in terms of quality, but consistent in terms of it needs to look and be structured like this with these same inputs. If it's a task or one-off communication, email, Slack message, things like that, use chat because you can build it with a workflow. Anything you do with chat, you can do with a workflow. The inverse isn't always true. But at a certain point, you're over-engineering a solution that doesn't need to be there. Then chat is very capable of handling your brainstorming, your strategy, one-off communications, and extending your thinking. Workflows, as we will see in a future office hours, is when you need to research, analyze, or generate content as part of a larger process. So anytime that you are building a multi-step, some people call it multi-threading prompts or multi-prompting, anytime that you are building out an entire AI system where you have all the steps mapped out, and you also need the outputs to be consistently the same structure, tone, and quality all across the board, then that's when it's more of a workflow type solution. And we will cover how to build those in an upcoming office hours. So too long didn't read is chat is for tasks, workflows is for processes. All right.
Great job, Nathan. That was a really informative session. I guess my one question, while we're seeing if any others come in, is do you, like, for your own personal use, do you find like, do you find the sharing aspect to be the most helpful? Do you find the model agnostic? Because I know personally, I personally really love that I can click between models when I'm in Copy AI and just be there in one spot and, like go back to my original output within the same chat thread and say, okay, first I was using Gemini and then now I'm using Claude and then now I'm using, whatever that other guy is, OpenAI. Would you say that that's the most common thing that like you also appreciate out of it, or is there something else?
Two things. That one for sure. The reason I like that is it helps me avoid skipping steps when then I go to build a workflow, meaning I get to see the outputs in chat before I program them into a larger system. And so I can see, okay, whenever I do this type of writing, this is the model that helps me out. And then when I go flesh out that bigger multi-step system, I can choose the right model for that. The other thing that I do appreciate it very much is that I'm not training those LLMs that I'm using. So my outputs are not getting sent to OpenAI. They're not getting sent to Anthropic. They're not getting sent to Google. It really is like having those very powerful engines in a silo just for our team and company. And I take a lot of security in that. I like knowing that, especially, when I read about data privacy and what companies like AI are doing in the data, ChatGPT releasing ads that I'm never going to have to experience in this interface. So things like that. Those are the two big things, I think, for me, the multi-model or being model agnostic, and then also the enterprise security layer.
And right now it's just text, right? Within the chat.
That's a great call out. Yes, our workflows can generate images. The chat experience right now is just text. Yeah. And which I'll be honest, if I'm making a custom image, I don't even use AI. I just use Canva just because if I want it to be that detailed, I find I can make it in Canva faster than I can have AI generated if I'm going for something specific. So.
I have a quick question as well, just to see your take on things here. So we covered chat versus workflows. What would be your stance, or I guess your suggestions, if someone was confused whether they should go to chat or build an AI agent out? Like where you would draw the line of moving over to something like that instead?
Yeah, like our content agent studio or like, yeah, okay.
Exactly.
Awesome. Yeah, that's a really good question. I would do chat if it is a one-off task that you really don't need over and over and over again. So let's say I'm going to brainstorm some keywords for this quarter's planning. I need to go through that mini process. In fact, even just the brainstorming phase, I need to do that once a quarter. I'm just going to pop over to chat. I'm not going to build anything. I'm just going to have this free discussion like a thought partner I bounce ideas off of. A thought partner that always accepts my meetings and never gets sick of me. They're so rare. And so it's nice to have one on hand in the dashboard. An agent, one of the content agent studios, I would build if I need a single piece of content repeatedly. And so if I need a LinkedIn post once a day or 3 times a week, I would then take the time to build an agent, but not necessarily a workflow. If I needed a transcript to turn into a blog post and a LinkedIn post and a Slack memo and a press release if we're launching a product or something like that, then I would build out a workflow. So it would be like chat is a thinking partner for strategy, quick one-off tasks that I'm not going to have to repeat. Content agent I would use for a single piece of content that I'm going to need on repeat, but nothing outside of that piece of content. And then a workflow for anything that needs to get turned into multiple different pieces of content downstream. And by content, I don't just mean for marketing. It can be customer emails, it can be sales enablement, it can be sales email follow-ups, it can be follow-ups to like webinars like this for attendees versus non-attendees, and I need both for every transcript that I use. So that's where I'd use it. Task and thinking partner for chat. Single pieces of repeatable content with Content Agent Studio. Bunches of different types of content, all from the same inputs with a workflow.
Awesome. I think that's so helpful for everyone to know too, so that they can understand they're seeing patterns within chat, as they're looking through history. Like, I am running this quite a bit. Maybe we do want to move towards implementing something else that could be a little bit more of a time saver.
And yes, I fully agree. And I think where I've seen teams struggle, and this is probably more of a message for team leads, chat is really cool and it is fast. However, it won't unlock and scale like workflows will, which we'll dive into in the workflow office hours. The problem I've seen with teams adopting workflows is the most common thing I hear is, I know it will save me 80 hours next month, but I can't find the 8 hours this month to do it. And chat, you just hop in and type what you want and you get something back. But if you're always doing the same chat over and over and over again, you still are losing time. And it's worth leaders giving their team the time to learn how to build processes with AI rather than just always be task-based. Because to your point, Maggie, we do see teams that are like in chat and they are consistently using the same prompt every week over and over and over to get something out. It's like, just build a workflow around it. It's crazy. I'm very opinionated on this. I'm too opinionated. I'm very nerdily.
No, I think these are all fantastic points, just to get the full use and value out of everything we have to offer and make sure we're using it correctly. Like you said, might be in the moment, take a little bit of extra time to learn how to create it, but then in the long run, you've got full automation with whatever it is you need to build.
Exactly right.
I think with my team lead, I know that there's also the search function in the chat where like you could search for keywords if, like me, you have just like a long page of chats, to find out topics that you're asking the same thing over and over again. It's like, okay, time to your
That
point,
is
Meg,
so smart.
go ahead and do something with this one. So that's
I didn't
handy
think
as
about
well.
that. Yeah. Go do a chat audit and search for things that you're doing over and over. That's very smart. I like that.
Awesome.
All right.
Yeah.
I was gonna say upcoming office hours. If you wanted to take it from here, that's all I have, unless there were more pressing questions. But again, chat is very foundational. It's worth knowing the basics. Make sure you're using it for the right things at the right time. Um, but outside of that, I do want to really pitch hard this Copy AI workflows, because that's where it's really neat. It's where things get cool.
Yes. So the next office hours, which we should have in May, will be all about workflows, and expect to hear from your CSM team and education team potentially to get the details on the timing of that one. We're excited to have you back for that one as well, Nathan, and maybe
It'll be
Sean.
fun. Cool.
Great. Well, thank you all. Have a great day, and we'll see you on the next one.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.